You know, woo, woo. It's awesome to have your friends up on stage and, you know, people that you admire and respect for the dedication that they have to the community and the dedication that they do for the time on themselves and everything else. And John and I have been friends for years and years and years, and sharing information and working on each other. He breaks my stuff all the time, and I appreciate that. So, you know, John is a fantastic speaker and someone that I really admire. So everybody, let's welcome John Strand as the second keynote to Derbycon.
All right. Thank you so much. So a couple of quick notes before we actually get started. This is kind of a different presentation for me for a couple of reasons. The first reason why this presentation is a bit different is, I shot an email to Dave and I said, hey, I want to do a presentation that doesn't have that much technical, and I kind of laid out my mom and everything I wanted to discuss. And I won't submit it if you think it's stupid. And he shot back and he goes, well, you want to do the keynote. And my wife is here somewhere, and she'll confirm this. I actually started crying in my office, and she's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "Oh, it was awesome." The other thing is, this is the first presentation I have ever given that I don't do the standard sans bullet points. So if you're expecting lots and lots of bullet points and slides, I'm trying to get better. This is my first attempt at recovery. So. So as I said, I wanted to say thank you for Dave for taking a chance on this particular presentation. I just absolutely love everything that he has done. We're happy. It's really cool whenever you come to a con and I run into people from InGuardians. Do we have InGuardians here? I know we have some InGuardians people here. And we go up and we hug each other. And whenever I meet the people from Dave's company, Trusted Sec, we go up and we hug each other. I mean, we're all competitors. I haven't seen Kevin Johnson yet, but we see each other, and it's like, it truly is like a family amongst the companies. And that's just something so incredibly cool. It's awesome to say, you know, these are people that are your peers, these are people that are your competitors, and we're also happy customers of Trusted Sec. They actually do our pen tests as well, and we have nothing but great things to say about them. And that kind of speaks to the community as a whole. Speaking of people in the community, another thing about this presentation is Chris Nickerson, who I've not seen at this con. Last year I saw Chris give a presentation, and it was this weird, disjointed presentation where it was a whole bunch of like small thoughts all kind of strung together. And it was weird, and it was beautiful, and it was awesome. And I wanted to try to do that as much as I possibly could with as few PowerPoint bullet points as possible. So let's get started. So years ago, whenever I was about 15 years old, I was in high school. And I went to a Catholic school, and my mother, kind of starting this whole entire thing off, was the food service director at the Catholic school. And I was going through the lunch line, and one of my mom's employees had put up all these little things. It's like, you know, God wants you to eat your peas. And I thought that was funny too. So I started making fun of these little signs. And I'm like 15, 16 years old. And I start going like, "Hail Jesus! Today we have peas and creamed spinach and fried chicken." And the next thing I know, I hear, wait. So I'm laying on the floor after I come to, and I look up, and there's Brother Anthony, who is a monk, and he has a cane, and he hit me in the head. And I'm just regaining consciousness. And then I see my mom come into vision here. She looks over me and says, "Hit him again, brother." So there's people that look at that story and they're like, "So your mom advocates child abuse?" And yes. As my children in the back of the room, "Dad hasn't hit us yet with a cane. It can get worse." So the point of that story is I was being a jackass. I thought it was funny to make fun of somebody that took something very seriously. And the lesson I learned that day is that, you know, the mom lesson number one is bullies suck. I tell that story, and I realized, unfortunately many years later, that what the brother, the monk, and my mom was trying to get across is that you shouldn't be mean to people just because they do things that you may not agree with. And there's been some drama at these cons lately, and people get really worked up, and we believe that we're 100% correct, and we have to argue, and we have to fight, and we have to tweet about it, and all this stuff. Just let it go. I mean, there's legitimate things to discuss, there's legitimate things to argue, but we shouldn't be bullies to each other. Just simply because we may have a disagreement. Like, if somebody's like, I like PowerShell, and everyone's like, I like Perl, it's like, well, get thee to an old folks home, I suppose. But I'm so sorry, Tom. I am so sorry, Tom. But the point of that is, we can have friendly conversations that don't have to devolve into people ending up on the floor and fighting with each other at that level. So let's talk a little bit about bullies, okay, in the industry. So we have a problem in this industry. And I was thinking about doing an entire presentation on this topic, but we have an amazing problem in this industry, and the fact that we have a lot of vendors who are acting like bullies. So, I'm going to use the most public case that's available. You have the Nss Labs versus Crowdstrike. And this is one of those things where I don't want it to come across as that I'm taking sides, because I think the Nss Labs report was poorly done, and I think that what Crowdstrike was doing was absolutely horrible. But the whole point of it was that Crowdstrike tried to file a restraining order against Nss Labs for releasing a comparative report about how they felt their product did. And the reason why they thought they could get away with this is because there was a clause in the contract that said it prohibited any competitive analysis on the product. That means if you're somebody who purchases a product, and this isn't just Crowdstrike, there are lots of vendors that do this exact same thing. They say, if you do any competitive analysis against our product, we can sue you. We're gagging you from ever talking about our product publicly. So this is a problem because what this effectively does is this stifles conversation. So the only message that we actually have in the marketplace is all of the marketing propaganda crap that's floating around. And how many of your CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, you've gone and you've discussed with them products, and they're like, yeah, I saw an advertisement on that one product in the airport. That product looks fantastic. It says it stops all cyber threats. And the man in the advertisement was wearing a suit just like mine. He did not have red hair or green hair or orange hair, which that's fantastic, by the way. That is amazing. So I think I can trust this guy, right? Because he says it stops all cyber threats. And then if they Google, how does that product actually perform? Almost all of the analysis that's in the marketplace is basically either A, from the vendor, or B, approved by the vendor to release. Well, just on that note, Sub T frowns on your shenanigans. It is a lovely shot. Actually, I shot him an email. Hey, can I get a picture of you looking angry at the camera? And he literally sent me the picture that he sends to every press release. I'm like, come on, man, I thought we knew each other better than that. And he's like, no, that's pretty much my expression when I'm happy, sad, coding. It's pretty much that. So, and there's been a lot of mention of Casey, and I don't think that we owe him enough gratitude in this industry, because what he's done is basically going about and breaking products consistently. And Casey will be one of the first people to tell you that a lot of the techniques that he comes up with, other people may have found those techniques. But there's a tremendous amount of people that will come up to him. We have people that come up to me. Yesterday at dinner, I was talking with some people. It was a fantastic conversation. And you talk to people and are like, yeah, so silence. Here's 4 ways to bypass silence. And this is a conversation that I have again and again and again and again, almost every conference I go to. And the question is, how come we don't see this documented somewhere for CrowdStrike, Cylance, McAfee, Symantec, all these products that are out there? At the end of the day, the reason why we're not seeing people talk about this, the reason why they're not having these conversations, is because they're terrified that they're going to get sued. With one of the Cylance bypass techniques that somebody came, they actually insisted on using kind of a NIM, a secret hidden name, and they wanted to contact me over wire to give me the information because he felt it was important that it actually get out in the community. Why in the hell are we hiding from our security vendors as though they're the Gestapo in Nazi Germany? This is not right. And you know what? It doesn't have to be that way. In fact, it's actually illegal. So I actually took the time and read the entire Nss Labs and Crowdstrike briefing. The judge in Delaware basically ruled and said, look, trying to do a temporary restraining order against this report is crap. And he went through the entire merits of why he doesn't really think that Crowdstrike should stop Nss Labs from reading the report. But down in section D, there's this paragraph, and I think it's fantastic, and I think it's something that all of us need to print out, and anytime you're talking with a vendor and you're dealing with their contract, you don't have to argue and to have them change their contract. Just let them know that there's certain parts of it that are illegal. It says, finally, in determining whether to grant a preliminary injunction, the Third Circuit directs that court should consider if doing so would be in the public interest, in reference to some cases. The recently enacted Consumer Review Fairness Act of 2016 underscores the public's interest in performance assessments, and it gives the number for the Fairness Act. The new law voids provisions from contracts that restrict a party to that contract from conducting performance assessments of or similar analysis of, including electronic means, goods, services, or conduct of a person. The court finds that the public has a very real interest in the dissemination of information regarding products in the marketplace. If it turns out in this case that Nss Labs data is inaccurate, Crowdstrike could publicly rebut that data with evidence of its faults. The public would in fact benefit from such an exchange between the parties because it would serve to inform them about the trust they should put in NSS futures reports. As such, the public interest weighs strongly in favor of denying Crowdstrike's motion. So what this is basically saying is point blank, anytime you have a vendor that says you are not allowed to do competitive assessments and you are not allowed to talk about our product, that clause is stricken. And I actually went and pulled the law. This is what it actually says. It says, except as provided in paragraphs 2 and 3, a provision of a form of contract is void from the inception of the contract if such provision prohibits or restricts the ability of an individual as party to the form of contract to engage in a covered communication. That's me talking with you, giving a presentation, you asking for advice about a product. That's covered communication. Imposes a penalty or fee against an individual who is party in the form of a contract engaging in a covered communication. Some of these contracts have line items that say, if you talk about our product publicly, we will charge you $25,000. That is automatically stricken. They cannot do that. So the whole point of all of this is those clauses are illegal. And what I want to say is, hey, can we make it open season on security products on every single product now? Is it possible that you guys, whenever you're evaluating your products at your own organization, start a blog, start sharing the information with other blogs about how you bypass these products? You are no longer shackled by the legal contract arrangement that your vendor put on you. Break the products. Break everything. Go public with absolutely everything across the board. It's going to make everything better. We have people now, they're like, he's reading laws to us. This is really weird. All right. So I want to shift gears. Like I said, I wanted to have a whole presentation on this, and I think this is great following up your presentation because it's about breaking everything and the importance of actually not just trust in products, but how do we trust those products and what can we actually trust moving forward. So I sent my mom to prison a long time ago. So my mother was a CFO of Black Hills Information Security for a long time. And she wanted to do something with us in the field. And we had an engagement where the customer wanted us to break into 4 different locations. And one of them was a prison. And my mom goes, oh, I bet you I can get in there. I'm like, what? How does that work? So, and she wasn't that worried, but my mom was a lunch lady. For 30 years, she was a food service director. And she decided it would be an absolutely fantastic ruse, and I'm not going to argue, that she would pretend to be a state health inspector and would show up to the prison for a surprise health inspection. She shows up with her clipboard. She goes right up to the front door, and we recorded the whole thing, and I wish I could release it publicly. But we recorded the whole thing. She goes up to the front door and says, hi, my name is Rita, and I'm here for your surprise health inspection. And they're just like, right this way, ma'am. The door's open. She got in, And so, ma'am, what do you need to review? She goes, well, I need to check your employee work areas. I need to walk around those, and I need to make sure that they're clean. You know, no food and stuff on the floor, because you don't want ants, and that's how you get ants. And I need to see the employee break areas, and I also need to see your nuke. Person's like, what? I need to see your nuke. I don't know what a nuke is. She goes, well, it's your network operations center. Oh, our NOC. Oh, that's it. I'm going to be in there for a while. I've got to check for bacteria. I've got to check for mold growth. And you know the rules, no food or drink in the nukes. So the person's like, it's a NOC, ma'am. My mom just kept playing it up. And they took her right to the employee areas. They took her right to the NOC. And she proceeds to give them a full health inspection, like full checklist, because she had done it enough. She knew how to do it. And she went through and she checked the temperatures of the refrigerators, of the freezers. She checked like bacteria counts on floors. I don't know. She checked the cleanliness of all these places. And she took pictures of everything. So naturally, they don't have a problem with her taking pictures with her camera. And they left her alone. And out comes the USB sticks, the rubber duckies, you know. So she didn't know quite what they did. I'm just like, plug this in. Where? Anywhere. But here's the problem. I send my mom off to prison, right? And usually physical assessments, I don't know, how many of you guys do physical pen tests? You got a number of you? Yeah. You want to get in and get the hell out as quickly as possible, right? I mean, get in, get the goods, and leave. She was there for an hour and a half. Like I said, she was going through, she was testing the temperature of the water for the water heater. She was checking the fridges for cleanliness, expiration dates on food. It was the entire thing, tip to tail. And meanwhile, I'm sitting with Ben Donnelly and we're like, what, where the hell's mom? We just got another shell. Oh, she must still be okay, you know? And So finally, at the end of her entire engagement, the director of the prison basically called her up and was like, quick question. What can we do to prepare ourselves for this again? Well, my mom had printed off a self-assessment survey and we had put an evil macro into it. She sits down with the director and she's like, here, open it up on this USB stick. It's that document. Yep, that one right there. Just run the macro. It's fine. Run the macro. So she did this entire thing and she shows up at this place where there was pie literally afterwards. And I'm freaking out and Ben's freaking out and she shows up and we're like, how did it go? Oh, it went so well. Hey, did you know that you went to high school with one of the guards? She just starts talking about all this stuff and we're like, so at the end of this, she reminds me, you know, whenever you do a physical assessment, you have people you're supposed to call to let them know that you're done. You're like, you know, bananas, Tango down. We were able to get into all the places. And it's also, usually that's your contact. If the police get involved, it's your get out of jail free card. It's like if they're starting to arrest you, just show them this document and then they'll call the people. So we start calling the people. No answer. We have four people. We call the first, no answer. And his voice message is like, hi, my name is Bill and I'll be on vacation, this week. And call the second contact. Yep, this is Jim. We will be on vacation this week at the scout camp. And I'm like, uh-oh. Call the third person. Same thing. Fourth person, it just keeps ringing. So it turns out that all of our contacts that we were supposed to call, if we got arrested, were out in the middle of the mountains with Boy Scouts doing Scout Week. And we would have had no one to vouch for us at all. So Black Hills who? Forget it. I'm on vacation. So the mom lesson here is be willing to try new things. I mean, even if they can get you arrested. I guess that's all of us that do pen testing. But when we're looking at computer security, so much of computer security it seems to be doing the same crap again and again and again and again. There's all of these different approaches and different things that we can try in computer security. I talk to some organizations still to this day, and I'm like, hey, have you guys thought about looking into application whitelisting? Oh God, that's hard. We can't do that. That's not new. It's not AV, IDS, IPS, firewall. We can't do any of those new things. We've got to be willing to branch out and try new things in the industry, because the standard crap that we're doing is not working. A lot of this, like standards and practices, due diligence, really isn't all that effective at stopping a targeted, determined attacker at your network. Hey, speaking of trying new things. So my mom passed away a little over a year ago. And I'm trying very hard to hold it together here, so just bear with me. People are like, he's usually a lot more animated and jumping on things. So she had pancreatic cancer. And if you have the wheel of horrible ways to die, don't choose pancreatic cancer. It's absolutely horrible. And she was taking standard drugs and standard prescriptions and Marinol and all that crap, and it wasn't working. Somehow, I don't know exactly how, but a large amount of marijuana showed up in a variety of forms. You had it in bags, of course. You also had butter and drips and all kinds of things. And that crap worked. I talked to a family member who tried it, and he was like, wow, this crap is not like what we had in the 60s. It's like way more powerful. And my mother would be in a lot of pain, and then she would take this stuff, and then she'd be like, I don't think this is doing anything. I just don't think this is, I don't think that this is working. Do you want me to make pancakes? Let me make some pancakes. But she insisted it wasn't working, but I'll tell you it did. It worked up until the last 36 hours that she was alive. That was pretty much the only thing she was taking for pain and keeping her appetite. So the other thing is my mother, less than 36 hours before she passed away, she had these quilts that she made for all of her grandchildren. And it was very important to her to make a quilt for every single grandchild, because, when you're dying from cancer, there's nothing like creating a tremendous amount of work for yourself. And she did this, but she was also continuing to work for Black Hills Information Security through quite a bit of it. She'd log in and she'd work. 3 days before she passed away, she called us down and she's like, I need help getting into my computer. And I'm like, oh, okay. We all knew that it was getting close to the end, but she's like, I've got to get some stuff done I've got to get some stuff done. And, we showed up and I'm like, so what's going on with your computer? She's like, I can't remember my password. And I'm like, why? She goes, I honestly can't think of why. But I used Conboot and got her into her computer system, and she's like, thanks. And she goes, yeah, I've got some things I have to get done. I have to get these things done. And I can't log in. So we got her logged in, and then she closed her computer system, and that was it. Like 36 hours after that, after she was done with the quilts, after she got logged into the computer, we switched over to morphine, and that was pretty much the end of it, at that point. But throughout the entire cancer process, the entire thing, she was insistent on working. She was insistent on trying to be helpful for the company. She was insistent on trying to finish up these quilts. And the point I think that I learned from that is don't give up. Ever. And, once you do, it's kind of over. And how does that apply to us in this industry? And to me? I know I have some graduates of SANS 504 in this class. It's a little class at the SANS Institute. And I give this speech at the end of class, and I talk about how it's important that we try to secure our networks because bad things will happen in the future and all these different things. But it's been getting really, really, really hard lately to talk about we need to protect our networks because really bad things might happen, because really bad things have happened. Has anybody ever wondered after Equifax what the hell we're trying to protect now? I mean, if your company has like social security numbers, dates of birth, you're like, hell, we're just going to publish that on our website directly. Equifax already released that. It's kind of like from here on out, you have a gimme or a mulligan, right? So if you get hacked, you're like, there's nothing that we released, Your Honor, that wasn't released before. You have the Yahoo breach, which is ridiculous. The OMB breach. How many of you guys had your data dumped out there? See, this is bad. None of us should have raised our hands. We just outed ourselves as people with clearances. Because we suck. Somebody in the room's like, I didn't raise my hand. But whenever you have your SF-86, what does the SF-86 have about you? Everything. What does it have about your spouse? Everything. It's anything at all that an organization would need to know to try to be you. And Securities and Exchange Commission, how many of your companies have been raked over the SEC for security controls again and again and again, and you feel just a little bit good that they got popped finally, right? But still, you kind of step back, and it seems like the sky is falling. And I don't have any really great way of trying to sugarcoat this at all. I guess what I'm going to say is, yeah, it pretty much is kind of falling. I'm also going to say we screwed up. Honestly, I think everyone in this room, in this industry, we screwed up. And we're pretty well hosed for our generation. So the question becomes, whenever we're talking about giving up, do we just give up? I don't think so. I think that that's the easy way out. It's kind of the nihilist approach, right? Just give up, walk away. So what we do now may not protect our information, right? It may not protect your social security information. It may not protect your date of birth. It may not protect your finances. And I don't want to sound horrible, but that's probably okay. Even though we have screwed up horribly about trying to protect data, all of us collectively, I think that the reason why we need to keep fighting is because of our kids and our grandkids. I mean, right now, everything in security is just a hot mess. Talking with the people at CounterHack, talking with the people at Guardians, talking with the people at Spectre Ops, to sit down and have a conversation. The organizations that are actually doing things correctly is really small. We're talking far less than a percentage point. The vast majority of organizations out there aren't doing very well at all. But I think the people in this room and the organizations that we work for, we need to light the way. We need to be establishing the new standards. We need to be blazing trails so that people will actually follow us and try to do better. That's the only thing I can get out of this, to try to find some type of silver lining in all of it. We have to do better for our kids and our grandkids, because right now we pretty much screwed up. And by the way, we screwed up. Let me clarify that statement. I have had conversations with people. I've sat down at dinners, and I've heard people say at this con even, well, those people at Equifax, they're a bunch of idiots. Their security team is horrible. And I've heard the same thing about the SEC. I've heard the same thing about Yahoo. I've heard the same thing about Sony. I've heard the same thing about Adobe. And I'm here to tell you, I know those people. They are not idiots. Please, whenever you see on someone's resume that they worked at Equifax, they'll be like, well, this guy's a moron. He doesn't. These organizations are dealing with the exact same pressures that you guys deal with every single day. You're fighting with budget. You're trying to do the right things in your organizations constantly and getting pushback from management, from end users, from systems administrators. They were just unlucky that the ISRN saw them and decided to attack these organizations. So pretty please do me a solid favor. If you ever get a resume for any of the people that have worked in an organization that had a massive breach, don't throw it away. That's a resume. That's someone that you want to talk to, because that person has intimate knowledge about an experience that many people don't actually have to go through with being in a very large public breach. So what I'm saying is help out our own. It's kind of like I started out this presentation. Guys, we can't turn on each other, okay? I think it's horrible how we kind of get into these arguments. Sometimes they're very petty. Sometimes they're valid, substantive conversations to have. But they're conversations. We shouldn't be yelling at each other. We shouldn't be making fun of each other. I mean, look around. I was kind of bummed. I found out Georgia wasn't going to be here. But she's one of my favorite people, because she's weird, she's crazy, she's brilliant. She's written probably the single best penetration testing book on the market. And you have people like Mick Douglas. I saw Mick somewhere. Mick Maniac back there. Mick Douglas is insane as well, constantly coming out with absolutely new ideas. And we have all these people that are not what you would call standard people. And they're welcomed here. And that is beautiful. And that's wonderful. And we should never let that go. So if somebody disagrees with you, or someone's a bit different, and someone doesn't fit the mold that you expect them to be, please don't try to ostracize them and walk away. We need to continue to work with each other. Otherwise, more of this crap is going to happen. All right. Now let's talk about math. Can I borrow a chair? There's some chairs. All right. So I had to put some things in this presentation that were a little bit technical. So just give me a minute. All right, so how do we know this is a chair? because it resembles other chairs. I like that. Very, very good. It's actually, okay, it has some really interesting stains on it. That's okay, because Dave, sorry. You got iced, I swear. So, what I want to talk about now is Real Intelligence Threat Analytics, or RITA, and how we use artificial intelligence in a free product to try to identify beaconing behavior in networks. And really, I'm trying to get people to assist. So, the algorithm that we have up here is part of K-means clustering. And that's one of the core algorithms whenever you're doing artificial intelligence and you're trying to actually build up artificial intelligence. And going back to vendors, many times whenever they discuss artificial intelligence, it's like artificial intelligence, machine learning, ooga booga ooga. And people are just supposed to be like, oh wow, that's AI. That's really, really powerful. But no one really knows how this works whenever you're talking to many vendors. So I want to talk about how it works, okay? So Plato had this thing, right? He had this big question about how do we know that a chair is a chair? How do we know that a thing is a thing? How does a human being look at it? And you're right, because it resembles the other chairs that we have seen. Well, it turns out that Plato was actually a computer scientist, and he was wrestling with a lot of the issues associated with artificial intelligence that we ultimately came to start coding and doing analysis on. How do you code a computer to actually look at a chair and say that's a chair? How do you code a Twitter bot to respond in a realistic way that doesn't basically start spouting off a bunch of Nazi propaganda after a while? So this is why do we get a woo about that? That disturbs me. Unless you're like, hey, let's make the bot do bad things, then yeah, that's what we do, right? So I want to talk about artificial intelligence and how it actually works, at least in one algorithm, because there's multiple algorithms, and this is one of the ones that we use heavily. So let's imagine that we have a target, all right? That target represents a 1. If something has a 1 value, it means it has a perfect something. It has a perfect chairness, for example. But in this situation, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence for beaconing and beaconing analysis. We initially released RITA at this con 2 years ago, and it's come a long way, and I wanted to share with you what we have. So if we take a beacon, right, just one type of beacon, there's a number of ways we can look at command and control beacons for malware. The first one is we can look at interval. Now, what interval represents is how regularly does that backdoor actually communicate? Does it communicate at very regular heartbeat intervals? You know, it's basically every 2 seconds, every 1 second, every 5 seconds, every, 15 seconds, once a day. I don't care. As long as the interval is, in fact, consistent, then it has a regular heartbeat. And the more consistent it is, the closer it is to 1. So you can see I have a bunch of dots up there. Those represent connections between endpoints on the inside of your network and on the outside of your network. So if you have a whole bunch of connections between 2 nodes, and it's really close to the target, that means it has a value of, or very close to a value of 1. But we have all kinds of other things, like PowerShell Empire. Have you guys have heard of this tool, I'm assuming? I think it's come up in some conversations. There's some products out there that can actually introduce jitter, where you can establish basically a time range whenever connections are made outbound. That's great. We can also look at data size. So whenever it makes a connection outbound, is that data size consistent? So if it's making a connection, like I always use the analogy with children. I don't know how many of you guys have small children or have had small children and they go, mom, 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 mom. That's an absolutely perfect beacon. It's consistent, has a great heartbeat, it's always the exact same size, right? So that data size is another thing that we can look at, right? So we can look at a cluster of all the different connections that maybe have a different data size as well. Then we can also look at connection time. How long is a connection established? If the connection is made, is it alive and running for, it's only up for 2 seconds or 1 second? How long does it stay alive? And we can cluster all of these. And there's some other things that we can do as well. For example, a lot of malware now is trying to introduce the idea of randomness in their connection. And we can look at the distribution. And you'll actually see a zero distribution by anything that does randomness and introduce jitter. Not anything, but a lot of malware that's out there. These are just 3 ways that you can identify connections in your environment by using that artificial intelligence algorithm. We identify what a perfect beacon looks like in multiple different ways. These are just 3. There's more. And then you can basically look at all the connections in your environment together and basically make a determination that there's clustered patterns, that you can draw these circles around these clusters. So this is the heart of what we do with RITA. And this is completely free. You guys can download it, and this is the output. So the score on the left-hand side is how close to a perfect beacon you have, and as you can see, 998 is really, really high. And then we have some other things like average bytes, interval range, mode, mount, queue. The skew is interesting. Skew and dispersion are very interesting. And the reason why skew and dispersion is interesting is because if you have automated malware that is randomizing its connection times, anytime you have an algorithm that does anything random, we have to properly call it what? Pseudo-random. Absolutely. It's got to be pseudo-random. So if you say that there's a 5-second interval of jitter, that can happen anywhere within 5 seconds, you'll actually see an absolutely perfect dispersion of those connections. So even trying to be random, it actually falls into a pattern of not being random. So this is a tool that we released because we have a lot of backdoors that we use, and people aren't detecting those backdoors. So we wanted to make sure that there was a tool out there that people could actually detect this. And there are some people on the market that are doing this today. It'll also do DNS blacklist lookups, and then it does exploded DNS. It basically takes all of your domains and subdomains and breaks them down. So like com has 32,281 subdomains, which we would expect. But Nanobot Ninjas has 30,191. That's how you detect a DNS backdoor. So if you're using DNSCat, it forces a recursive lookup every single time it connects outbound. That way you're going to see tons and tons and tons of random subdomains. So the thing about this is it's free, and we need help. You guys can download it and install it on any Ubuntu 16.04 system in about 5 minutes. But we want ideas. We want more people. If you like Bro, anybody here use Bro regularly? Come and talk to me at some point. I have something special. We're trying to line up some people for some fun stuff. But it uses Bro as its heart, and it does the analytics on top of Bro logs. So come and chat. I'll be in the booth outside that door. And we really want people to start using this product and give it a shot. And it's been amazing. We've had some very, very, very interesting customers with very, very specific types of threat actors coming after them. They're saying, yeah, we're actually detecting it with this tool, and our firewall and IDS and IPS is not detecting it. Another quick heads up, it's not fast. I mean, it is really fast, but if you have a standard day of analysis, like we're talking a couple of terabytes per pop, it's actually going to take about 8 hours to kick out the analysis because it's connecting, it is watching every single connection in your entire day and doing full analysis. That's why we wrote it in Golang. So that's that. So what's the lesson on this one? So while my mom was passing away, I was going down to Arizona a lot. Cancer Treatment Centers of America down there. We were flying down quite often. I think I was down there like 5-6 times. And my dad practically lived down there, and that's just where he was at in the parking lot. And whenever I would go down to Arizona, we'd stay at like the Holiday Inn Express, which is close. I would do my presentations in the hallway because everybody would be in the bedroom and they'd all be talking about cancer and things like that. And I would do webcasts. We do webcasts all the time. And I'd sit in the hallway and I would do the webcast from there. And my mom would come and sit next to me on the floor. And through the whole thing, you'd have like 600 people, it'd say, my mom's here, and they'd say, oh, get well soon, and send her well wishes, love, prayers, thoughts, happy well wishes, all of it. And I remember we were giving a presentation, one of the earlier presentations about Rita, and we were talking about what we want to do with the heart of what made Rita work in an open source project. And my mom was basically like, just give it away. Just continue to give it away. And her point on that was, the community has been very good to me. Community has been awesome to us. And it's amazing how few organizations out there consistently give back. Like, let's just use Dave as an example and embarrass him a little bit. I'm assuming it's not free to get Busta Rhymes up here. And he's going to be on this stage, like on a stage with, that's going to be awesome. But everything that he does gets fed back into this conference. And all the free tools, from social engineering toolkit to artillery and everything that he gives back to this community, is a representation of what we need to do in this industry, to constantly be giving back. Don't ever get to the point where you're like, you know what, we're going to take this, we're going to lock it down, and we're going to sell it. Or you've got to be constantly giving back to the community. And once again, that's the only way that we get better as a community. And it's cool that we have a community that actually does that in this industry. So let's continue to give till it hurts, because that's how we get better. So the last one's really hard for me to get through. So 2 weeks ago, I was at a conference. I'm not going to say what one, but I was at a conference. And one of the individuals there had a remote access tool control server up, and he had 5,000 nodes that he had access to. And he wanted to show me. He clearly doesn't know me very well. He's like, yeah, you gotta come look at this. I've taken over 5,000 computers. I'm like, well, you did this with permission, right? You're pen testing. Yeah. I'm doing it for educational purposes. And I once again was like, you have permission to be on these computers. He's like, well, I'm not doing anything bad. I'm not doing anything bad on these computers. And throughout this con, periodically, I would see that he had webcams up, and he would cycle through the webcams on his system, trying to find webcams of women. And then he would stop and stare, and this was creepy, like really intensely creepy. And the thing that hit me about that is he didn't think he was a bad guy. Didn't really cross his head. And he looked at what he was doing as purely academic research. He looked at what he was doing as not violating the privacy of these 5,000 people. He looked at what he was doing as he was a hacker. And he's doing what hackers do. And that's bothered me a lot. And I won't go into the rest of the story, but it's been sitting with me for a long time, because when we're looking at what we do here, we have very interesting skills. My mom and my dad were very interesting and weird people. In my house, my godfather had this picture that he drew of a prison. And for as long as I can remember, this has always been in my home growing up. And I never thought it was weird until I brought it into the office of Black Hills Information Security, and I put it up on the wall, and people are like, why in the hell do you have a picture of a prison? I'm like, well, this is a picture from my childhood. So it's now in the bathroom at the offices of Black Hills Information Security, and I still think it creeps people out, probably quite a bit, actually. But this was a key part of my childhood. I remember whenever I was young, I would run around, and my mom would point out this prison. And she would always say to me something to the effect of, you do not want to end up here. You do not want to go to prison. Don't go to prison, John. And I think growing up like blue collar or quote unquote redneck, quote unquote possibly white trash at different points, I think for a lot of parents, I don't know how many of you guys grew up in that type of background, your parents are just happy you're not in prison, right? Doesn't matter how successful you are or how much money you make or how happy you are. They're like, I'm so happy that my son graduated from high school and he's not incarcerated. That's kind of the standards that they had. And she would always like kind of point this out to me. And I didn't think anything weird of it at all. But at the same time she would talk about that, she would also encourage me as a kid, like, superheroes. She loved Superman and I loved Superman, and she loved the idea of Superman, right? And she always drew this kind of, this contrast for me, that I could either be in prison or I could be something fantastic. I could be a superhero, right? And I always looked at it as very, very stark contrasts. And that's why I'm very much an avowed white hat. I don't really find a lot of gray area, and I know some people do, and that's your thing, but I don't really find a lot of gray area. It's either you have permission or you don't. But I think my mom knew, when I was very, very little, I was rambunctious, I was very loud, and I think she always knew that there was two possible paths for me, that I was either going to be something that was going to work out really well, or I was going to end up in prison. And she was always creating that stark contrast for me. At all times. So, when my mom was passing away, she pulls this out. She goes, I'm glad you chose wisely. I'm going to drown one pain with another. So. Sorry, I'm trying really hard not to lose my crap here, okay? But I can't believe she kept that for like 35 years and gave it to me. So the final mom lesson that I want to get across here is we have the power to be awesome. Once again, we look around this room, and the thing that keeps on striking me, you guys know that scene in Guardians of the Galaxy? Like, see a bunch of losers, and they don't want to say you guys are all losers. But whenever I talk to people, a lot of us were the people that were put down. A lot of us were the people that were made fun of. I mean, how many of you guys actually have Dungeons and Dragons dice on you right now, right? And, you know, we talk about being obsessive compulsive, and these are our people, right? And for better or for worse, fate has put a tremendous amount of weight on the future on our shoulders. And we need to take that with that type of responsibility, and we need to take that seriously. And that means, for the love of God, stop trying to hack each other at conferences all the time. I know that's not going to happen, right? That's just the way it works. So like, okay, I was with you right up until that point. I'm still standing up evil wireless access points at these cons because it's the only place I can do it. And we also need to stop ripping on each other. I know I keep coming back to this theme and it makes people uncomfortable. We can disagree. That's fine. We can disagree on security approaches. We can disagree on politics. We can disagree on religion. But hey, could we kind of like tone it down and not yell at each other and tear each other apart, please? You need to tone this down, okay? And, you know, and I talk to people and it's like, you know, some people are like, this is not a family. This community is not a family. Okay, so it may not be, but it could be. And that actually has some negative connotations. I know there's some people that's like, I hope it's not like my family. I hope it's not like my family. But maybe we are, right? So I wanted to say thanks. To Dave and the crew at Derbycon for putting this on. This is ridiculous. This is awesome. And I hope that this continues for as long as possible. And I really appreciate the community. I really appreciate everything you guys have done for me over the years. I just appreciate it all the way around, and just seeing people come up and doing awesome stuff like Matt stuff and Sub T, who I'm sure he's here somewhere. You guys, please continue to try to emulate these people. Break things, test things, share things with each other. I mean, that's being a family, right? How many of you broke things constantly in your house? And that's what we need to do. And for the love of God, don't any of you start being normal, because that'll be the death of this industry. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, everybody.